This is pemmican, the survival food of the Native Americans. It's only made of dried beef and beef tallow and a little bit of salt. And in this video I will show you how to make it.
It is important to use very lean meat so that it becomes really hard and brittle when you dry it. First, put the meat in the freezer for a few hours to harden it, or at least until it's pretty firm. After freezing, let it defrost a bit. This way it can be perfectly cut into thin slices. The thinner the better. If there are larger fat pieces like here, cut them out. Then hang the slices over an oven rack and dry them in the oven at 50 to 70 degrees Celsius or use a dehydrator. If you're worried about bacteria, you can heat the meat at 130 degrees Celsius for half an hour. But after half an hour, be sure to lower it back to 70 degrees or lower, otherwise it will burn. Also, if you heat it up to 130 degrees, it will lose a lot of water quickly. So you have to put a griddle underneath during the first 40 minutes. Otherwise there would be a big mess and the water would take forever to evaporate. After 1 hour at the latest, remove the tray with the water. Many hours later, everything is finally dried. It's really important that there's no moisture left in the meat. The slices need to be completely hard and brittle and should break easily. Next, grind the meat. You can use a blender or whatever you have. I use this old coffee grinder because it works extremely well for me. Then you get this meat powder. I also recommend to then sift the meat powder because sometimes small pieces remain which are extremely hard and would be unpleasant to eat. You can simply add these small pieces again in round 2 and then just continue the whole process until everything is ground. If you have something with a larger capacity like a blender, you can probably grind everything in one go.
Next comes the beef tallow, which is basically the fat from a cow. If you don't know where to get it, you can find it online, but you can also go to your butcher. That's what I always do. I go to my butcher and I just tell him that I want to order some beef tallow.
He then gives me these chunks of beef fat. Maybe you will also get your hands on tallow that is already rendered. But if you also have to deal with such raw chunks of fat, cut them into small pieces and melt them in a large pot. Keep the temperature low so it doesn't burn. After many hours, it looks like this. There are still many pieces of meat and tissue in the pot that won't dissolve because they aren't made of fat. Next, pour the liquid fat through a sieve and into another pot. Even these pieces, which are called greaves, still contain a lot of fat, so you have to press them like that. I personally use the greaves to make broth later, which also has a thick layer of fat on the surface the next day. I could also add this to the other pot, but instead I use it for cooking because it would take forever for all the water in it to evaporate. Letting the water evaporate is also the next step with the fat in the pot. It needs to simmer for a longer time at low to medium temperature. You need to do this for as long as you see these small bubbles rising. Only when there are no more bubbles rising, all the water is gone and the fat can be bottled. While filling it into jars, it should be filtered with a cheesecloth. If you don't have a cheesecloth, use only fabric which is made of natural material like cotton, and don't use a plastic funnel to fill it into the jar. It could melt. Tallow can get much hotter than water, so generally wait a bit before filling. I'm not sure how much heat such jars can handle. Then put the lid on and the tallow supply is ready. It also looks beautiful while it's still liquid. Back to the meat powder, which now needs to be mixed with the tallow. You can mix in liquid fat directly, but as you can see here, I add the cooled tallow and warm the whole bowl in the oven so that the fat melts. Don't do this with a plastic bowl. Regarding the amount of fat, there are different suggestions online. I just use enough so that the mixture is liquid enough to be scooped and poured out again, as you can see here. Don't add too much tallow or the bar will end up being mostly fat. Now is also the right time to add some salt if you want. I definitely recommend it for reasons of taste.
Some people may also add dried berries or honey or stuff like that. It's very likely that the Native Americans also did that. I personally just go for the 100% carnivore version, but do whatever you want.
The next step is to fill this mixture into little molds like that. You can find a big variety of molds made of metal and silicone online. I'll link some in the video description. You can also use muffin tins or whatever works for you. With a metal mold like this, don't fill in too much or everything will crumble when you remove it. The first few times are always a bit of trial and error. Just find out what works best for you. After the mixture has cooled, the bars can be removed. For me it works best to use such a tool. This way I can remove the bars without damaging them. I personally like to wrap them into sandwich paper for storage. Over time I've built up a nice stockpile.
I think pemmican is the perfect carnivore snack if you're on the go. It's not even a snack. I think it's a good carnivore food if you're on the go. Of course it's not the same as eating a steak, but I personally really like the taste. Not everybody likes it, but I like it. And also it's so dense and packed with nutrients, because think about it, this used to be 1 kilogram of meat and now it's just 5 of these little bars. So if I eat these 5 bars, it's like eating 1 kilogram of meat, and even more because I added some fat. Not just some fat, a lot of fat actually. Okay, that's it for this video. I hope you liked it. If you liked it, give the video a like. Thanks a lot for that. All the best. Bye.